Coaches, welcome to our second video in our Coaching Mastery series where we go beyond the X's and O's and give you the tools to become a transformational coach and mentor for your athletes and build a culture of sustained excellence in your programs. If you're just joining us, my name is John O'Sullivan and I'm the founder of the Changing the Game Project and author of the books Changing the Game and Is It Wise to Specialize? Thanks for being one of the thousands of coaches who is watching this series and for being dedicated to serving your athletes and serving your teams better. Thank you for taking the time to educate yourself and learn from some of the leading coaches and performance experts in the world. As one of the coaches in last year's Coaching Mastery series said to me, what you learn in this series will make a profound difference in how you coach, lead, and mentor your athletes. It can change everything for the better. Now, this free video series is for coaches who want to take a giant leap forward in their ability to develop athletes and lead successful teams. In our first video, we talked about the number one thing the world's best coaches do to push their athletes to play harder and their teams to compete better. We also learned from Tom Bates, one of the world's leading psychologists in sports and leading performance experts, but the one thing that many coaches, including me, have done before a big playoff game or a big match that we think helps our team, but actually can kill the confidence and give your team less chance of success. If you haven't watched it yet, you can click on video one above and watch it now. And check out some of the comments below the video, which are really amazingly insightful about what qualities the best coaches possess. Thank you to all of you who took the time to comment, because I read each and every one of them, and I've even left some thoughts of my own down there. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about the single greatest issue that faces modern day youth coaches, and that's dealing with the parents. I have never met a coach who hasn't said at least one time, sometimes I wish I just coached orphans. Me too. But we don't. So we need to do something about the parents who undercut our coaching, who confuse our players and undermine our team culture. So many coaches simply ignore this part of coaching and they suffer the consequences. But imagine what it'd be like to coach a team where the parents were supportive of the things you were doing, where they let you coach, where they accept their child's role in the team, and the fact that he or she might have to play an unfamiliar position or come off the bench for the greater good of the team. That can change everything. I think it's really important to re-emphasize the massive role that we play in our athletes' lives. When you look at those comments on the previous video, when I hear from athletes and coaches from all over the world, one thing becomes abundantly clear. If you're a coach, you're very often the second or third most influential person in an athlete's life, behind mom and dad. You will 100% guaranteed leave an impact on every single athlete you coach. You'll leave a significant imprint on their lives, each and every one of them, and it's impossible not to. What will that influence be? What will you leave? Will it be something positive and affirming that bolsters your athletes and serves them throughout life? Will it be a more fulfilling experience for you and your players, more enjoyable and more successful? Or will it be something that tears them down, that diminishes their self-worth, that makes them fearful of mistakes or ties their self-worth with sports success? We all mean well, but sometimes when we're pushing to win a game or talking to our teams after a tough loss, we say and do things that we later regret. I know I have, and for many years, I never considered for a moment that my harsh, personal, and often over-the-top criticism of a kid might follow him or her off the field. But it did, and some of those kids quit. I didn't realize for far too long that bad experience in sport affect them in every aspect of their life. And when I did, I knew I needed to change. Realized that I was not going to find out how to change by taking traditional coaching education courses. So if you're only studying the X's and O's, you may be missing opportunities to build kids up, to make them believe in themselves on and off the field. You may be missing opportunities to serve them better. But you have to be intentional about everything you say and do, because everything you say and everything you do has a lasting impact. Whether you like it or not, dealing with the parents on your team and helping your athletes to get on the same page as mom and dad, even sheltering them from some overbearing parents, that's all part of intentional coaching. Now, one of the best ways that we can serve our players better is to help the sports experience belong to them. And quite often, the people who steal that experience from them are the people who love them the most, their parents. And just as we need to intentionally lead, mentor, and serve our players, we need to intentionally lead our team parents and teach them how to help their kids and give their kids ownership of the sports experience. Because when they do, kids will compete harder, play with more confidence, and your teams will perform at a much higher level as well. So that being said, let's talk about how we can better deal with the parents in our programs. Now, I asked all of you to email me your biggest problems or issues that you deal with as coaches, and far away dealing with parents and crazy parental expectations and behavior was the number one answer by far. They're not patient with player development. They want their kid to play all the time in their preferred position. They think their kid's going to get a scholarship, even though we know that less than 1% of kids do. So many parents overschedule their kids, so the kids are tired or they can't come to practice, and they show up at the game and they expect to play the whole game. And yes, the parents expect you to win every game and act like the sky is falling if your team doesn't win. We have parents who expect their child to play every minute, even if they miss half the practices. See, there's an interesting thing about parents in youth sports, and I've made a little graphic to show you what I mean. And it's the balance of patience and expectations. When our kids start out, parents have lots of patience and very low expectations. And as we invest more money and more time, our expectations rise very fast, while at the same time our patience for results and development drops. All of a sudden, the two lines cross, and whammo, we have problems. We forget how players develop because it's not in a straight line, but it's in fits and starts. And at this point, one of the biggest issues is that parents forget that this experience is supposed to be about the kids. They lose sight of why their kids are even playing the game. They see their kid for what he or she could be instead of what they are. They expect us coaches to get them to that point today, now, or we're going to find someone else to do it. So how do we deal with this? Because you have to deal with this as a coach. This is the intentional part. Ignoring the parents and expecting them to behave well, it's not going to happen. Saying nothing and hoping they'll stop coaching from the sidelines or yelling at referees, it's not going to make the problem go away. Failing to educate them and provide them with ways to help the team instead of hurt the team, it's not going to help. Making them sign some useless code of conduct that no one holds them accountable for anyway, it's not going to make one bit of difference. You need great parents who buy in to what the team is doing and what their kids are doing if you want to have a great team culture. But so many coaches ignore this. So it's very likely that the parents on your sideline, they've never been taught how to help and how to do so. And you need many of your team parents to have a paradigm shift. You need them to act differently, not because they have to, but because they want to. There's one voice more powerful than yours, a voice that parents are actually far more likely to listen to than you, and that's their kid. The problem is that most parents have no idea what their kids want or what their kids think of you. Because they never ask, and most kids are never given the chance to voice their opinion, this gets missed. But I found a way to make this happen. Here's the number one way I get parents, players, and coaches on the same page: goal setting. So when I started coaching, I used to do goal setting, and I would set all the goals and expectations for my teams, and then I would yell and scream and push and prod my players to my goals. But what I realized was that that wasn't helping. And then thankfully one day I had a player say to me, "Coach, these aren't our goals, these are your goals. We're not good, we're not going to win the league." And that's when everything changed for me. And what I realized was if I was going to be an effective leader and an effective coach, I needed to know what my players wanted out of this experience. So then what I started doing was goal setting, but here's how I did it, and this is really interesting. I would ask my players, what are 3 individual goals for the season, and what are 3 goals that you have for your team? But then I would ask their parents the same question. What are 3 individual goals you have for your son or daughter, and what are 3 goals that you have for their team? And then I would make them take these goal setting sheets home and compare. And the amazing part about this was so many parents actually had no idea what their kids wanted out of the sports experience. They thought that their kid maybe wanted to be a college player and was going to play at Stanford. And their kid didn't even want to play in high school. But what happened was when I was able to get the parents and the kids on the same page, everything changed. Because now the parents could push their kids, but they could push them towards their goals. And now as a coach, when I knew what my players' goals, I could push them towards their goals as well. So this is an incredibly powerful tool because what you have to do when they sit down and they go over goals is that the parents have to accept their children's goals for playing sports. If they don't, and if mom or dad wants them to play in college and kid doesn't even want to play in high school or doesn't want to play anymore, that abyss can swallow their relationship. And I found so many times that these parents, they had no idea what their kids wanted out of it. And when they did, and when they accepted what their kids' goals were, so many things changed. Parents would sometimes apologize to their kids for pushing them way too hard. I, as a coach, sometimes would apologize to my teams for pushing them to things that they didn't even want out of this experience. So one of the most powerful things that you can do is do this type of goal setting. Get your parents to set goals for their kids, get your kids to set goals independently, and then compare those goals. What many parents realize for the first time, why their kids are playing, and that their ideas and goals are completely different after this exercise. And here's the most powerful part. If a parent is really driving you nuts, acting like an idiot on the sidelines and hurting everyone's performance, it's unlikely that there's a lot that you can say that'll make a difference. But empowering their son or daughter to say something, this can totally shift the paradigm. So a great friend of mine in coaching told me this amazing story recently about how this one dad was just driving him nuts. And he'd sit behind the bench during the games and he'd yell and scream at his son. He'd yell and scream at my friend, the coach, because he didn't understand why his kid was playing the position he was playing and why he was coming off the bench instead of starting. And then one day, as they were watching game film, the kid turned to his dad, who was complaining about the coach and complaining about his role, and said, "Dad, can I talk to you?" And he told him that actually he was the one who asked to play that position. He told his dad that actually he was the one who said, "Hey, if I can help the team by coming off the bench, I want to do that because I want to win a state championship." And he said his dad just started crying and apologized. And then he showed up at my friend's house and he apologized. And he said, "I'm so sorry, coach. Here I was thinking that you were just totally messing up my son's career. And I never asked him that it was actually, he was the one who had asked for that to happen. He was the one who had asked to help the team out in that way. And I totally apologize to you. And I'm so proud of my son for making this sacrifice for the greater good." So I think this is an amazing story about getting parents and kids on the same page, because oftentimes you will just end so many problems when mom or dad know exactly why their kid's playing and what they're doing. So download the goal setting sheet below and try this with your teams. Get your athletes and their parents to fill these out and have them sit down and compare. Collect them and look at the goals of the parents and kids and see if they match up. If you want to become a coach of positive significance, you have to deal with parents and help kids deal with their parents. There's no way around it. Helping parents get on the same page as their kids and you will go a long way to building great connections with your players and better teams. And giving the child a voice to say, "Mom, Dad, I love my coach, I love my team, and I love my role in this team. Can you just let this belong to me? Can you just be quiet and let me play and enjoy myself?" This can change the whole dynamic for your players and your team. This can be life-changing for a kid, and this can be life-changing for you as a coach. This small thing could be the difference between having an average team and a great team pursuing a common goal. Imagine what it would feel like to coach a team where the parents left you alone to do your job, where they respected and understood the hard work that you put in, where they let the experience belong to the kids and had patience while those kids developed. You know how much time you spend dealing with parents who just don't get it. Imagine how much more time you would have if even a few parents changed their tune because of this. Because I know they will. I've done this and I've seen very difficult parent groups become just fantastic people to be around. I've seen average players blossom because mom and dad let them go and gave sports to them. And you can do this too. You see, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and having the same result and wondering why. Well, if that sounds like your teams, one unruly parent group after another, then isn't it time to try something different? To be intentional about educating your parents? To change course, maybe even admit when you've been wrong and say, "I'm going to change, but so are all of you." This is powerful coaching. This is coaching for positive significance. Okay, so let me switch gears for a second here, because for the second half of this video, what I'd like to talk about is what do we do as a coach when that inevitable conflict happens, no matter what we say or do? We've set goals, we've set down rules, we've had our preseason meeting, we've set expectations, we've communicated. And yes, like it or not, we are going to run into those parents who just don't get it, who just don't agree. So what I want to do here is get some advice from one of my friends, and her name's Ruth Nicholson. And Ruth is not only the founder of the Club Development Network, but she is the founder of Nicholson Facilitation and Associates. And she's spent decades in professional mediation, facilitation, and conflict resolution, where she's going into corporations and solving these seemingly unsolvable problems. And so she also is the founder of this Club Development Network, which advises in youth sports operations, volunteer management, organizational planning, government, and the lot. And I did this hour-long interview with Ruth, but I want to just show you a short clip about that, of how do we deal with this inevitable conflict, and how do we separate what she calls interests from positions. And so in the lead up to this clip I'm about to show you, what Ruth talks about is how we have both positions and interests when it comes to a conflict situation. Now, positions, well, she uses the example of an orange. And if you have two people who want an orange, the logical solution would be, well, let's share the orange. But what if they don't want to share? Now, both of those people have a similar position. I want the orange. But they might have completely different interests. So she tells the story of doing this with a class of third graders. And one kid says, well, I'm hungry. I want to eat the orange. That's his interest. And the other person says, the other third grader says, well, I want to bring this orange home and bake a cake for my dad and use orange zest on the icing. So that's her position. That's her interest. So basically, they have the similar position. I want an orange, but they have completely different interests in why they want it. So what we learn from Ruth in this is that interests can be very different among two people, even when the position can be the same. So as a coach, the real world example of this might be playing time. You have two players who want more playing time. That's their position. But their interest of why they want that playing time, or more importantly, why their parents want that playing time, can come from two different places. And so as the coach, you might have to be very creative in how you find that playing time. So in this clip from Ruth, what she suggests to us is, how can we find out the interests behind our parents' positions? Because oftentimes when we figure out what the interests are, we can really dive into, well, what are these positions, and how can we find a common ground so this is not a zero-sum gain, as she says. So enjoy this clip with Ruth. She's going to teach you a few questions and a few things that you can do that can really help deal with those inevitable conflicts that you will run into with parents as a coach. So, how do you how do you start this conversation to start solving this issue?
There are a whole bunch of different questioning techniques, but the simplest one is to pretend that your 4-year-old nephew, and your 4-year-old nephew's favorite question in the world is why.
Yeah.
And there are lots of ways to ask it, but as you start the conversation, asking why in a number of ways that isn't sort of in your face and challenging, mm-hmm. but in that curious, I really want to understand. Mm-hmm. It's clearly important to you. I really want to understand this. So before I go coming up with a proposal to solve this, I want to understand. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like if you've made vegetables for dinner, you made broccoli for dinner, and your kids don't want to eat the broccoli at dinner, right? Mm-hmm. Not their favorite thing. Mm-hmm. And I say, Daddy, why do I have to have broccoli with dinner? Mm-hmm. And you talk about a balanced meal, and it's important to have vegetables with your meal. And, well, why, Daddy? Mm-hmm. And then you go a little deeper into why balanced nutrition is important for growing bodies. Mm-hmm. And then you get why again. And now you're getting a little uncomfortable. It's like, oh my gosh, just eat your vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
But every time someone asks you that, you have to go a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, you're explaining to your kid that you care about their health, you love them, you want them to eat well, because it's about taking good care of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's about you love them. That's why you get broccoli at dinner.
Right.
So those questions help get the interest.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come into step 3, which is, okay, now we're having the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully it's voice to ear, either on the phone or face to face.
Right.
But it's not technology to eyes.
Right.
It's voice to ear. And you know what your interest is in terms of player development, in terms of moving kids around for different reasons. And you get what the parents' issues are. Mm-hmm. And then you can start asking, instead of looking at it as a zero-sum game, you can look at it as something more. So pretend our transaction is that I'm going to buy your car. Mm-hmm. You're selling me your car. That's pretty much a zero-sum game, because you want to get the most money out of your car, and I want to pay the least money for your car. Mm-hmm. So we're both going into it as a mindset in this negotiation that one or both of us are going to lose something.
Right.
Going to give up something.
Right.
And folks typically don't want to give up or lose something.
Right.
If you change your mindset to, how many ways can I satisfy your interest and mine? Mm-hmm. Then that curiosity then helps.
Right. Yeah, I like that. It's a really interesting concept there, right? Want to find a solution that you're happy with and I'm happy with.
Yes.
And it's not just that you're happy and you're going to get everything that you want. It's a solution that works for everyone.
But if you have an orange problem and you really don't have to cut it in half, then don't cut it in half.
Don't cut it in half. Right, exactly.
Right? Not everything is an orange.
Yeah.
And that curiosity can help you figure out, is this an orange or is this something else? Is this a car sale or an orange, right? And so when you're going through the conversation and the emotions can, get the better of all of us, the 3 questions to ask as you're having the conversation is, the first one is what? What do we know? And we can verify. It's not rumor. It's not assumption. It's, what do we know? We have this many kids on the team. The game is this long. What do we know? And then, so what is, what does it mean to us? What's our reaction to it? And you can start to build an understanding of, oh, when this happens, this is how it affects my child, or this is how it affects the team, or so you're interpreting, you're building on what, so what does it mean? Now what is, so what are we going to do about it? But you're dissembling the facts from the reactions from we want to move forward. You don't want to live in the muddle that is uncomfortable and conflicted.
Right. Don't stop there. Now you have to say, okay, so where do we go from here?
Exactly.
Right. Even if we agree to disagree, we got to go somewhere next.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
The other thing that I caution people about, and I would challenge you, take the next week and see if you can eliminate the word "but" from your vocabulary. Yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds.
No.
So how many times have we tried to, I'll try to feed you a compliment to like butter you up a little.
Right.
And then I'm really going to say what I mean.
Right.
So it's like, well, John, you look okay in Portland Timbers green, but you look better in Seattle Sounders Rave green.
Right, exactly. And what happens is everything before the but is gone.
Is gone.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't give you a compliment about the Portland Timbers at all.
Right. Right.
And so imagine how many times as coaches at the halftime break say something like, you played really well the first half, but this is what we're going to do the second half.
Right.
What did you really tell your kids?
Yeah. Just what we're going to do the second half. Yeah, there's no that. Yeah, and I think it's such an important thing for coaches to realize, and this is just not even a coach to parent issue, this is a coach to player issue, that you can't form things with but. Like, right. It's got to be, yes, positive, teaching, critical, positive, but it's not a but. It's
you can say, and you can say there are a lot of other words to put in there.
And these are 3 things that we can do to help us get better. Is very different than, but we're not doing these 3 things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're working with a parent, because the last thing you want to do is insult them on top of the on top of the conflict. Okay, it's already uncomfortable.
Right.
So well, your son is a pretty good player, but avoid that sentence.
Yeah.
But how many times have you tried to make it better with that front end? Your son is a pretty good player, and he can become a better player if he works on these skills. And this is how we can get there. Right? Just the and. So, okay, let's build on that. Let's help that player improve or earn more playing time or try out a different position if that's possible.
Yeah, words really matter.
Yeah.
And you have on your worksheet here, right, a key question to remember during this, right? How many ways can we meet both of our interests?
Yes.
Right? And maybe one of the most important questions that you can ask in any conflict is finding how many ways we can meet both of our interests.
Yeah. And even if you get stuck, so I say, you know what, doggone it, I want to play left back. That is my position. By gosh, that's, I've always wanted to do that. Asking, how many ways can you help me learn how to be a defender? How many, are there other ways that I can earn that playing time, that I can compete better for that spot, to get creative about, you only got one left back, but you've got a right back.
Right, exactly.
I hope you have a right back.
Maybe not. Yeah, cool. So what do you think of that? Pretty powerful stuff, huh? I know I have used that advice to diffuse some potentially team-destroying conflicts and turn around my relationships with a tough parent and a parent with their own child. I hope you don't ever have to experience such a situation, but if you do, I hope that advice from Ruth gives you a great start. Now, in a few days, I'm going to release a 3rd video of our series where I'm going to teach you the #1 secret of winning programs. I have 2 expert interviews for you in that one. In one, you'll learn about a program with fantastic coaches and a sustained culture that year after year leads to tremendous results in over a dozen NCAA titles since the year 2000. If you doubt that building connections with players can also lead to wins, or that somehow this is non-competitive, you won't after our next video. You're also going to meet a man who, through his work as a coach and sports psychologist, has been a part of 34 NCAA titles. He's going to teach you 2 critical questions that every coach must ask in order to build a championship culture in his or her program. These 2 questions can make or break your next season. So stay tuned for that. Now, in the meantime, please go down below this video and share with everyone one way that you've dealt with over-the-top parents and their expectations. Do you have a secret sauce for our coaches here? Because we'd all love to hear about it. And again, if you know any coaches who would benefit from this, please send the link on to them as well. So thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.